Good day. This is the second PowerPoint in a series called SIAS Made Easy. In this PowerPoint, we're focusing on the learner profile. Please note that the learner profile is a legal document. No relevant information may be removed from the learner profile. If information is needed, a copy of the relevant document may be made. But the birth certificate, road to health, and any other report may not be removed. The learner profile must be completed in print at least once a year. That is the minimum requirement. When information is included in an area marked with an asterisk, a SNA 1 should be completed. The learner profile is a record of the learner's history. If we do not have information about the child's birth, early childhood development, school admission, and scholastic development, it will be really difficult, if not impossible, to determine the cause of barriers of learning should they present themselves. It would also be difficult to compile an ISP, individual support plan, or to refer the learner for further testing or specialized intervention. Let us look at this learner's history. First of all, we can note that the learner experienced asphyxiation during birth. This could lead to a lack of oxygen in the brain, which could later manifest as barriers to learning due to physical challenges. In 2015, the child was tested and it was found that he's not ready to go to grade 1. The grade R teacher compiled an ISP, individual support plan. In an ISP, we need to try and determine and focus on the cause of the barrier. It could either be physical, cognitive, emotional, or social, or even a combination of these four. The learner now needs to be prepared in order to attend school. When the learner was 6 years old, his eyes were tested and his hearing was tested, and it was found that he needed glasses and a hearing aid. Once again, the ISP should be adjusted to accommodate these physical challenges, which could lead to barriers to learning. In 2017, an SNA 1 was compiled and the learner was referred to the school-based support team. The individual support plan was once again adjusted, and it was decided that the learner should be tested by the learning support teacher. After the test results, it was decided that the learner should be referred to the district-based support team. Because we have all this background information, it was easy for the district-based support team to determine that there were physical as well as cognitive barriers to learning, and that this child would benefit from being referred to a special school. We therefore see why this record of learner history is so important. First of all, when we have a SIAS file, we need to ensure that the educator's name and class is on the outside of the file. The file should be covered and neat. There should be a table of content as well as a SIAS class list in the front. What documents should be included in this file? The admission form, copy of birth certificate, copy of road to health, transfer certificate, only if a child has been transferred from one school to another, indemnity forms where necessary, all the letters from parents or to parents, absenteeism letters, medical reports, support services, intervention reports, and the current report card. In this case, or in each child's case, that should be the end of the year report card, the December report card. The only time this is not the case is when the child is being transferred from one school to another. Then the latest report card should be included. Of course, not the original, but a copy. The personal information of a learner should be completed in black ink. It should also be updated whenever it changed. For instance, if a mom and dad get divorced and the mom remarries again and the child now legally acquires the surname of the new dad or the stepdad, then the surname should be changed. Home language is very important. We tend to not fill that in, but we need to know that the language of learning and teaching is not always the same as the home language, and it is important to know. It is also important to indicate whether the child is male or female, as there are unisex names such as Jade. We don't always know whether this child then is male or female by just looking at the name. The ID number is very important, even though the birth certificate has been included. People don't always understand why it's asked to indicate whether it's an only child or maybe there's 5 or more children in the family. But being an only child can have an influence on the child's emotional and social development. Also, being part of a large family may have an influence on the child's development, and therefore it's relevant to mention. Any disability should be noted, even if it's a minor disability, such as glasses. If a child must wear glasses, it should be noted in the learner's profile. If an SIAS teacher realizes that the child should be wearing glasses, he or she can then note whether that is actually happening in class, and they can address that issue. It is also important to know whether the child's parents or guardians are receiving social grants. Whenever the disability or type of grant is filled in, we need to know that this can have, or this information may have an influence on the child's development, and therefore an SNA 1 should be completed. The following information should be in pencil, as this can change, and we do not want to continuously scratch out. When we ask for the family doctor or clinic, it is important to mention which clinic. For instance, if a child lives in a Ravensmead area, the child could either go to the Ravensmead clinic, the Uitzicht clinic, or to Tygerberg Hospital. And when this information is needed urgently, it helps to know exactly which institution to contact. It also helps to know what that institution's contact number is. In a case of an emergency, this can actually save a child's life. Please note that all allergies should be indicated in red. If a child has asthma, it is important to know that, because that child should have an asthma pump with him or her. Or if a child is allergic to bee sting, because this could lead to death. Chronic illnesses, asthma, once again, can and should be indicated on the child's profile. A person to contact other than the parent or guardian. In many cases, during an emergency, it is not possible to get a hold of the parent or the guardian. In such a case, it is important to be able to contact a parent's colleague, another family member, or the neighbors. The Road to Health card is very important, And the number should not just be indicated on the learner profile, but a copy of the Road to Health should also be included within the learner's profile. Any indication of problems, as we've discussed earlier, during the child's growth process, prenatal or postnatal information, and his immunization record should be mentioned, as it can have an influence on the child's later development. The information about the parents or guardians should be filled in with pencil, as physical address, postal address, telephone numbers, cell phone numbers, all this information can change, and we don't want to constantly scratch out on the learner profile. Please note that the guardian information can only be completed when the guardian has been legally appointed by the court. We need the physical address, telephone number at work, home, as well as a cell phone number. I am aware that not all parents have email addresses, and therefore we can only fill that in if a parent has access to email. Persons that the learner lives with. Now, in this case, it would be a grandmother or auntie that the child lives with, but this person has not been legally appointed as the child's guardian by the court. Then this section needs to be completed. Once again, it should be done in pencil, as the contact details may change. Then it is important to know how the child is transported from and to school. If a child is transported via a taxi, it is important to have a taxi driver's name and details. It might happen that the child is not collected from school and you cannot get a hold of the parents. Then it would be really helpful to have this information at hand. Early intervention services. As I've shown during the introduction, it is quite important to know whether there were complications during the child's birth or during the child's early development. It could even have been an accident, where the child was in a car accident and were hospitalized. Now, we usually do not have access to this kind of information, but when we identify certain challenges, the next step would be to meet with the parents, and then it is imperative to ask the parents about the child's early development. Schools that the learner attended. First of all, we need to note that the EMIS number is not the child's SIAS number. The EMIS number is the specific number given to a specific school, and each school has its own EMIS number. Secondly, the LOLT stands for Language of Learning and Teaching. Note that it's not the home language. Many people do not complete this section correctly. We only fill this section in when a child is admitted to a school, or when this child leaves a school, or when the child is transferred to another school. This should not be completed yearly. Areas needing ongoing support. Area of need could be something like vision, which would be a physical challenge. And then we would say that the child needs to wear glasses. Or the child needs an assessment accommodation, where we either enlarge the print or where somebody reads the child's assessment to him or her. If a child has ADD, attention deficit disorder, or ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, the child might drink medication. It's important for each year's teacher to be aware of this fact. Official reports should be included to indicate that it has been decided by an optometrist or a psychiatrist that these interventions are needed. Social needs. For instance, the child should eat at school. Every teacher, every year, needs to know whether this child should be excused and should receive feeding at school with the school's feeding scheme. Emotional or behavioral challenges. If you found a technique that works, you must please also mention it here. The cumulative record card must be completed at the end of a year. This will enable educators to see whether learners already repeated a grade within the phase. Lastly, the details of the class or registered teacher must be filled in annually, and the teacher must also sign the learner profile. This is all the information needed in order to successfully complete a learner profile.